The 2026 MINI 1965 Victory Edition costs $47,000. You'd assume that's a base JCW with a premium tacked on for paint and the numbered door. It isn't. A loaded JCW Iconic sits in the same price range, the cosmetics folded in instead of option packages. So forget the stripes. Is any current MINI JCW worth $47,000? The Turbo 4 makes 228 horsepower, which is the same as the old JCW, but torque is up to 280 pounds, up 45. The headline number didn't change, but it's the one underneath it that you actually feel. The engine's not about the top end of the tack, it's about the mid-range, and this motor does a wonderful job of shoving you from one corner to the next. That shove begins to soften as you approach redline, and I think MINI engineered this for a road driven at 7/10, not a racing circuit driven at 10/10, which, my friends, is exactly how these cars get used. There's one transmission, it's a 7-speed dual clutch, and there is no alternative. But this gearbox is good, and the logic behind it is sound. It always seems to be in the right gear, and it shifts quickly up and down the box. I think it's just in this go-kart mode where it will hold gears and actually bounce off the rev limiter. In the other modes, it will upshift for you, so keep that in mind for your spirited driving adventures. Because when you're having fun in the corners, the last thing you want this to do is upshift on corner entry. Pull and hold the left shift paddle, and you get a 10-second period of maximum boost with a countdown timer on the cluster and the heads-up display. I'm not sure why, but it seems like MINI decided that overtaking needed a stopwatch. A dual clutch this good used to be the fun alternative. Now it's the default, and the reality is a good automatic is a good automatic. Now, the spec sheet doesn't lead with this information, but there is no limited slip diff at the front. That means you get 280 pounds of torque going into the front axle through an open diff. And instead of mechanical torque distribution, you get the electronic systems refereeing the whole thing. MINI calls it torque vectoring, which is probably a more favorable way of saying that the inside front brake is doing community theater as a differential. The good thing is, though, on every surface I've driven this on, the system is invisible. And it's so good, I actually forget what's going on at that front diff. On the other hand, at $47,000, limited slip diff would not have been an extravagance. The launch control theater is the one feature that you'll trot out for your friends maybe once or twice and then completely forget about. Make sure that the MINI's in the right mode, brake and throttle on together, release the brake, and this will do 0 to 60 in the right conditions in about 6.1 seconds. And that's quick enough until you remember that cars costing this much are at least a full second faster. But this MINI isn't about standing starts. It's about getting you from one corner to the next on this abundant wave of torque. And if you take one of these for a test drive, it's going to be the torque that sells you. When you're behind the wheel, some of the noise comes from the engine and the exhaust. A lot of it does come from the speakers, and this MINI is not subtle about it. When you're attacking the corners and lift off the throttle, the system fires a bunch of fake burbles through the rear speakers that no one is going to confuse for genuine exhaust notes. Now, I want to call it go-kart mode, but technically here it's an experience. It sharpens the throttle, changes the transmission map, stiffens the dampers. It does not, however, install a go-kart. Subscribers get notified when new episodes drop on this channel. Everyone else leaves it to the algorithm. If you want to see when our new episodes hit YouTube, well, that's what the subscribe button does. MINI steering has always been quick, and this latest generation is no different. Small inputs do a lot, whether you're in town on the freeway or enjoying a lovely road like this. It always feels responsive and alive. On the other hand, when you get out onto the open road, whether it's the freeway or a wide open country road like this, it doesn't feel nervous or twitchy. It's quite happy to track in a straight line, and in fact it's strong on center. It's electrically assisted, so feedback is more like an impression than direct information. Through the chassis, you feel the front end loading up into the corners, but you're not getting any direct information into your palms. But it's a little economical about the truth as to what's going on at those two front contact patches. On the topic of brakes, and if you're coming from the previous gen, know this, for this latest generation JCW, MINI went to a simpler front brake setup, whereas the previous gen had 4 piston calipers at the front. This one's not quite the same. These are now single piston calipers, and MINI will point towards a change in pad compound, and that definitely makes a difference. For me, I can control the attitude of this MINI on corner entry through that brake pedal alone, and I think the pads do get a lot of credit here, and on public roads, they're absolutely fine. Just into this corner, I've got precise control with that brake pedal, and that's the thing about these brakes. The pedal is firm, bite is strong, and as I get into pedal travel, I've got all the control and confidence that this will stop quickly, especially under full ABS. It's zero dramas, and this thing stops extremely short. What we've lost with those 4 piston calipers is the ability to have extreme precision over the length of a track session, and for track rats like us, maybe that matters. And on track, that gives you repeatability and confidence from one lap to the next. And at this end of the market, it's the MX-5's 4-piston Brembo setup that is the reference standard. This one's not quite there, but there's still plenty of braking power, great bite from that pedal, and I wouldn't say no to a track day behind the wheel of a JCW. One place where this MINI shines is in its wider track. This latest generation has a wider front track, and that allows you to point this MINI in the corners with a lot of precision. And on the responsiveness of the front end alone, that still gives this new MINI go-kart attitude. Lift the throttle in the corners and the nose tucks in, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. With the previous gen in the corners, you could lift the throttle and it would actually help you rotate the car. This one stays planted. It's more neutral than pointy and more benign when the old car was lively. This suspension setup with the adaptive dampers allows some body roll, some dive under braking, just to give you an additional channel of feedback. And yes, it's always happy to tell you what's going on, even if it's a little less mischievous about it than it used to be. Adaptive dampers are standard, and that's actually a good thing for a small hot hatch like this, because there's not a lot of mass here. In a big sedan, for example, that extra mass would just help soak up those larger road imperfections. In the standard setting, the suspension's still on the firm side, but also pretty civilized. Firm it up like we are now in go-kart mode, and this thing does get buttoned down, and it's not quite as civilized as the comfort mode, but it doesn't get brittle except on the worst road surfaces, and here in the Toronto area we have plenty of those. The F66 put on about 150 pounds over the old car, right at about 3,100 pounds. It's still a relative flyweight in context to 2026. It still has that go-kart attitude, but now it's just packing a bigger lunch. One interesting thing I found with this one is that the wheel center caps are self-leveling. The MINI logo stays upright while the wheel spins, and you could say that this is trickle-down engineering from Rolls-Royce, and it changes nothing about the way this car handles corners. Push past its limits and it's still happy to remind you that it is front wheel drive. And if you're not careful, the nose will push through the corners and physics is just going to collect what it's owed. Traction and stability systems do have an off button, but keep in mind it's not fully off. If you want to support the channel beyond just watching, well, the merch store link is here, and your support there means more time for us to produce episodes like this and a little less time worrying about industry access. No pressure, just an option. You don't sit in this Mini as much as you do put it on, because the nature of this cabin creates some theater because it is such a unique driving experience behind the wheel. You've got that vertical windscreen that feels like it's several feet in front of you and tall glass all around. The fundamentals are correct because there's lots of adjustment in the seat as well as the steering column, and I have just the perfect interface to this Mini. Seat cushioning is on the firm side, and maybe on longer drives that might make a difference, but in day-to-day driving it's exactly what I want. I wouldn't mind a little additional side bolstering from these seats because this is JCW after all, but there is still a reasonable amount of support when you got this loaded into a corner. As much as Mini has strived to create space in this cabin, and when you're behind the wheel, it actually feels smaller than I think is portrayed on screen. And yes, this is the kind of car you wear, but here it's deliberate and doesn't feel cramped. And whether your passenger agrees is between you and your passenger. One thing I did discover is that there is a massage function to these seats, which is odd because this is the most sporting Mini you can buy. And clearly somebody at Mini decided that even hot hatch buyers deserve a back rub. The wheel is the right shape and size for the mission of this Mini, and the one thing I appreciate is that it's round. There's no faux flat bottom bit, and this spoke made of nylon, and it's a special one here for this Victory Edition, adds a little bit of character and doesn't detract from the driving experience. The wheel encourages you to have your hands at 9 and 3, and the shift paddles are here within easy reach. You really can't ask for anything more. Or perhaps you could, because these shift paddles are made of plastic and they don't feel as expensive as the rest of the car. Visibility is excellent in all directions, especially forward visibility. That allows you to place this Mini with precision when you're having fun in the corners. Large outboard mirrors, and align your 3 mirrors properly and blind spots aren't real. Materials are interesting for this latest generation Mini, and they're all very premium. It's only in rare instances do you find some hard plastics, but the design of everything gives this cabin a very premium feel. One thing I did notice is when you switch this to the go-kart mode, JCW comes up, and some of the numbers like the torque and power and speed change to the JCW font. And the cynics will say, well, none of that makes the car faster. I say it's just more committed to the bit. And then there's the screen. 9.4 inches, it's round, it's OLED. Mini's moved a lot of the controls, including the climate controls, into the screen, which does make adjusting the temperature a little challenging from time to time. For me, I'm an automatic climate control set it and forget it type, and all I really want to know is whether Apple CarPlay works, and it does. However, it's rendered as a square in this round screen. This is begging for the square peg in a round hole joke. I don't have one. The best one in the comments wins a sticker pack. The back seats exist in the way a glove box exists, technically present, occasionally useful, and there for things you don't need at this very given moment. The 1965 badges all around the car are entirely cosmetic, but they're nicely done, especially those on the door sills. They change the resale story, but they don't change anything about the driving experience. If this episode gave you something that you didn't get from a brochure or a press release, hit the like button. It tells YouTube to share this episode with other people like you interested in an episode like this. Takes 1 second. A press car loan lasts about a week. Ownership is what shows up later, and the forums are specific about it. Start with the screen because everything runs through the screen. Mini put the climate and drive modes behind one round display, and owners reported freezing and going black, with the voice assistant quitting after updates. The community fix is a 30-second hold on the volume knob to reboot it while you drive. Then there's vibration. A run of 2025 and 2026 owners describe a shimmy. It comes through the wheel and mirrors at speed, and dealers have swapped steering racks to chase it. Not every car, enough to look for on a test drive. Leave it in normal mode, and owners report a hesitation off the line, like the car is deciding whether you meant it. Go-kart mode clears it, so most owners stop using normal. One thing that the brochure undersells goes in the other direction, the flip-up heads-up display. To the uninitiated, it looks like cheap plastic, but it outperforms the look. Polarized sunglasses, which wash out plenty of windshield projected displays, leave it bright and perfectly readable. MINI solves something that many manufacturers haven't. This Victory Edition is the same JCW underneath the paint and the stripes, and those are some of the issues. If you own one of these or have some quality seat time behind the wheel of one of these, let me know what I got right and what I got wrong in the comments, because real-world ownership experiences are much more valuable than anything I can learn in a week-long press loan, and I always read those comments. Back to the question at hand. The Victory Edition's drive verdict is the Iconic's drive verdict. And that's because what's underneath is identical. The white roof and the rally number change how the car looks in the driveway, and nothing about how it moves. The real question was never the Victory Edition, it's whether any 2026 JCW is a $47,000 car. That depends on what you want from a small fast hatch when the manual is gone and the brakes got smaller. If you fancy yourself a mini collector, the limited edition cap is the whole argument. Plus, you probably stopped listening to me 2 minutes ago. For everyone who drives, the math is simpler. A loaded Iconic costs about the same and lets you pick a color you'll still like in 5 years, minus a rally number that's achieved more than your commute will. This F66 JCW is a quick, likable hot hatch with a couple of compromises, sold at a price that asks you to ignore them. The Victory Edition asks the same, but with the stripes already on. $47,000 buys a lot of hot hatch in 2026. It also buys this one, but that's a little different than it sounds. A limited edition holds its premium until the first owner drives it like a JCW, and then it's a used Mini with a good story. If you're looking at a JCW, by the time you look at this Victory Edition, it's collapsed into the Iconic trim. And that math is the Iconic's math, what a F66 JCW is worth in 2026. And the consensus on all of this seems to be mixed, because this F66 wasn't received the way the F56 was. And here I think this Victory Edition is an interesting choice for the buyer who appreciates this aesthetic. And when they see it, they decide that this is exactly what they want when they would have simply otherwise ordered an Iconic. And for anyone who wants a JCW based on driving merits alone, just get the Iconic in the color that you want. Total numbers in the US are limited but undisclosed, 45 units for Canada only. If a limited edition is meaningful to you, then you're probably going to want this, but if you're about the driving experience, well, you probably don't need the Victory Edition. That's the Mini Victory Edition. Subscribe if you want to see more episodes like this. Don't if you don't. Comments are open if you disagree, and the merch store link is here if you want to help fund more of these. See you on the next one.